this is a very short gameplay loop. Like, I'm not saying I wish it took longer, but there's a part of me that kind of did, because like if I had to take time and effort to grow these things like a bit longer and it could grow while I was in a different world, that could actually be pretty cool, because then it's like, oh, you need this, you're gated by this to get there. You have to grow your stuff, you have to do all this stuff manually basically. But instead, a lot of the time it feels mostly unnecessary, which is kind of a shame, because I think they want this to be a multiplayer game where people like actually work together and, you know, do multiple things that need to get done. But instead, what happens is like you don't need it. Not really. And since actually going to this next age is going to be surprisingly easy, which I'm actually just going to put these in my inventory since I know what I'm doing at this point. There's no need for me to even... It's like, okay, if I'm doing this and I'm trying to advance the age, there's no real need for me to go adventuring at this point, because I've already grabbed so much gold, because it is actually really easy to get gold. Gold was around just on the, like, first island thingy that I went to. And then when I went to the desert island, it was sort of like, oh, I have crystal, I guess. That's pretty cool, but it's also still a level 8 island. Like, maybe by trying not to gate anything anywhere because they're still in early access, and they're like, oh no, what if stuff's too far and people complain about having to, and we can't test it because it's so far away and hard to get to. I feel like it still kind of suffers a little bit that way, because it almost feels like nothing you do like really assists the other things you're doing. Like I'm creating enough batteries to advance the age with one generator and just throwing random animals into it. And maybe that's fine. But it feels like what I've created doesn't matter. Like, by trying to be partially Factorio, or partially Factorio / Satisfactory, and being like, oh, if you create all these things, then you'll be able to go to the next step. You'll be able to go to the next stage. You can only do that if you create enough efficiencies, and you can go there faster if you work on making more of the things you have, and you have to balance, like, oh, do I want more factories? Or do I want to use the stuff I've already made from the factories? Because more factories, you'll need them eventually, but you also need the stuff that comes from them to go to the next level of stuff, because you need the science. And you're like, well, do I turn this ore that I'm getting here into science, or do I turn it into something else that'll help me get more science in the future? Whereas for this, none of that is here. None of that extra stuff that you need to do is a part of it. You just, at any point in time, if you want to advance the age, you can brute force it. And it doesn't take very long to do brute force. Like, yeah, you can brute force some things in Factorio, but like, not really. You can't make the science unless you have a factory, and it takes so long to make the science that, like, yeah, sure, you could just leave the game running forever, but if you're playing with aliens, like if you're playing with the enemies on, you're going to lose more resources over time from just the pollution you created and the enemies you're attracting. Whereas here, I could just brute force it. There's no downsides. The resources are more or less unlimited, and they're really easily available. Like, as soon as I get gold, as soon as I had the steel, as soon as I had the gold, I was able to create the pickaxe I needed. Which, sure, you don't want the pickaxes and stuff gated very hard, but because there's no automated, there is an automatic way to mine stuff, but you don't need it, because mining manually is fine. It doesn't take very long. So by being both even just by being both a Minecraft type, like Minecraft Terraria type thing and a Factorio, it kind of fails there. For being a farming simulator, it also fails for this, or like, and not even like fails. Like it doesn't. It feels like it knows what it wants to do, and I definitely think that there's a lot of places it can improve, but I think that thinking about how they gatekeep things is going to be really, really important as they develop this game here on. Because, yeah, like, crappy gatekeeping sucks. Nobody likes being like, oh, I have to do 50 dungeons before I can advance the age or whatever. Like, that's stupid. No one wants that. But I also think that it doesn't feel very satisfying to just be able to do a loop where I just ran around, collected... Oh, I actually need to collect one more animal, it looks like. Or do I already have one in my inventory and I haven't put it in yet? Nope, I need to go collect one more animal. I just go collect one more animal, and it was like, what, 4, maybe 5 total? And it's actually not satisfying to collect the animals in the Pokeballs. I thought it would be, and it's kind of cool. Like, it's not bad, but it's very hard to aim. There's not a lot of feedback for if it's working or not. And there's no, like, there's like supposed to be a tamer thing or whatever where you can like pop them out and I guess fight with them. But instead, you just don't need to. You don't need to do anything. But you kind of need to do some stuff. Like, look at how many wheat fields I have. I'm supposed to need to do, like, a whole bunch of stuff. Like, if this was supposed to be I guess, a farming / Factorio simulator, I should need to have a whole bunch of wheat fields or take, like, 40 hours to do this manually, you know, to be able to get all the wheat and the bioethanol I need. But every single field gives me like eight wheats, which is a lot. And it would feel really unsatisfying if it gave you 1. But because the automation stuff is also actually one of the things that's gated really far down the line, it's like, how do I build up to that? So, like I said, I think there's a lot of potential in this game, but I honestly wonder if it's going to be possible to balance it in a way that's satisfying for the kind of gameplay that they want. And I think that if they want to do that, their best bet is honestly to look at something like Terraria, where you have actual, like, the gates for Terraria are the bosses. You cannot progress and you cannot get certain ores, you cannot get certain pickaxes and stuff before you do that. And if you want adventuring to be important, that's a good way to do that. But if adventuring isn't important and you want to prioritize something else, adventuring is going to feel less important. Like, it just will. Unless you find just a whole different way for farm stuff to go up. But for all of the aspects to matter, they need to affect each other. Like, and they kind of do, because you are mining stuff by going on adventures and getting ore and stuff and cruising to create weapons, except for the fact that I don't want to create weapons, because every weapon that I found that's dropped from the enemies and in the things at the end of dungeons are better than anything I could craft. So why would I craft weapons? I mean, if I need to craft weapons, the only thing I would need to craft is arrows. But I have no incentive to craft arrows because they're the only thing that takes the same materials as everything else. So really, I have to wait for this last one to finish and then I can put more stuff in. So really, in terms of like what this game wants, I think it really wants the adventuring to be important. Like, and probably the most important thing. Like, it wants adventuring to be sort of the fuel that moves the game forward. So, like I said before, look at Terraria. And from Terraria, see if you can have certain bosses and certain dungeons, or certain, like, you have to have reached this level of island, or just put them further up on the islands. Make some of these enemies like actually hard, or make them feel more satisfying to beat, or make certain ingredients that you need only drop from certain bosses that you can find from dungeons. So you have people who have to go searching around and get excited when they see a dungeon. Though you might have to at least make it look different if it's a speed dungeon on the outside. Otherwise, you'll be like, but I needed a boss to get this thing. How am I supposed to? But if you did that, if you still have your little speed trial stuff, like that's fine. Those are fine. Like they're just kind of there and they're just kind of bonus, but it's fine. But if you had instead like materials that dropped from bosses that you needed to advance the age or to craft stuff, or you could craft things from the chests at the end of these boss dungeons. Or maybe just all dungeons. I mean, I guess if you want the adventure part, the exploring part to matter slightly more than the combat, then they can drop from all dungeons. But if you want it to feel more epic and cool, it's probably better if it drops from dungeons where, like, teamwork and, well, you know, fighting does anything. So yeah, I really wonder, like, if it's something that they're considering while they make this game, or if they're just making more and more and more stuff and just hoping that the more stuff they make, the more things we'll be able to do, and then you'll just keep playing because there's just more stuff. And there is something to that. Like, there is something to just exploring a world and finding stuff. Like, that's cool. I like doing that. I like going in the adventure tunnels and finding new things. I don't know what's out there, and that's really cool. But I also feel like going out and doing that, I'm de-incentivized to do that because I feel like I need to advance ages first. And that might not be true at all. And if that's not true, the game should make that more clear. And not in a, like, pop-up window, but in a, like, this is how the gameplay loop works. You can't advance the age until you reach at least this level of island in the explorer thing, or until you find this kind of biome out there. You can't do these things until this other thing happens. And maybe there's meant to be just way more ages, or maybe the ages are meant to be way harder to build, but they just don't have a lot yet. But I don't know. Is that really all it needs? Just more difficult things to get? But it shouldn't feel just straight grindy either, so... Well, I mean, so that's just my opinion so far. And, like, I didn't plan on getting into a whole game design discussion about this, but I've reached a point in this game where I kind of feel like I should, because I'm kind of running around and being like, haha, things are funny and such, but they're not as funny as they were when I first started playing this game. So what I'm doing is I'm laughing at stuff, but, like, I'm kind of not lost, but I feel like I'm left wanting something more. And maybe that's just like, oh, if I just ignored all this stuff and went out and did adventuring, that would be fun. But will it be, or will I regret not advancing the age first because I won't be able to mine all the materials I want, and because traveling back is kind of a pain in the butt. Traveling back to this island and then traveling back in there, it's hard. And, like, the teleportation things, you plop them down, they let you leave, but they don't let you come back from there, which would be pretty nice. I understand that's something they may want and don't have yet, but again, what's out there that I actually need? I seem to be able to get everything within just, like, the 1.5 islands I went to already. And I'll definitely look at the other stuff because apparently there's crazy stuff out there. And I want to know. And I want to show you guys what's out there in this game. But who knows? Maybe it's just not really ready for a big, fulfilling experience just yet. And that makes sense for early access, but... Oh, look at that. I was talking and doing this the whole time, and now I can progress to the next stage.